Harvey with the time to talk to us.
No problem.
Happy to be here.
So we have 3 releases. We're releasing across the line. We've got a Sweet Dreams, a Flame, and an Originals, and we've got 2 brand new series launching this week. So it's like we're touching all the bases, all the flavors of ice cream. But the first book that releases this week is Marie Higgins' book, and it is A Maiden to Remember. It's the 3rd book in the Love's Addiction series, and it's a Sweet Dreams book. Marie, can you tell us about it?
Sure. Okay, so this, as you mentioned, this is book number 3 in my Love's Addiction series. The series, pretty much the tagline is they try to fight love, but it's very addicting because, it is. And so in all of my books, of course, they have some reason or another not to want to fall in love, not to fight it. So this last book, Maiden to Remember, she actually is from a titled family, and she had a fiance and was in love with him, but he was killed. And so she has been mourning. I'm thinking it was 3 years. It could have been 2. But her father finally put his foot down. No more mourning. You will get married. You have a month to get married. Or, of course, there's always that or I will force you to marry your stepmother's cousin.
Ew.
This vile, disgusting, and he causes a lot of trouble in this story. Anyway, but of course, she doesn't want to get married because her heart still is healing, and she can't find anybody as good as worthy as her fiance, her dead fiance. Anyway, so now she's panicked. She's desperate. And so she, one of her brother's friends drops by to visit, and she hadn't seen him for a while. And she realizes, okay, so his name is Vincent Wallace, and he is a newly appointed, girl, don't ask me now, but I think it's an earl, because his father died anyway. But his father left him in destitute, and he's got 2 sisters to provide for, and there's no money to fix up the estate, to help his sisters, and so he is desperate too. And so she realizes, okay, he's the one. I will propose this plan, we will marry. You can have my
marriage of convenience.
I'll have this big dowry, and I will help you with your sisters. But yeah, we have to marry. Of course, he doesn't want to marry. She doesn't want to marry, but it's the only plan. And in name only, because I'm not going to love you. You're not going to love me, kind of thing. And so that's what they do. And of course, at first it's like, well, I think so. She proposes sort of to him, proposes the plan.
That's a bold move on her part.
Yeah, and so but he turns her down, and so that frustrates her. But then he's like, "But I'll help you. I'll help you find somebody. I'll make And it's funny that this plot idea is kind of similar to the Bridgertons, the first one. And because it's like, I will give you my attention so that other
will pay attention.
Come in, so it's kind of off that, plays off that. But of course, things happen, and they fight it, but it doesn't quite work out. But then, like I said, this bad cousin, stepmother's cousin,
the vile man,
he causes a lot of problems. And so, yeah, there's a lot of scandal stuff going on, and a lot of there's a mystery kind of going on, because with all of my books, I love to have some kind of little mystery going on. So, yeah, so that's what my book's about.
Oh, fun. So we get a marriage of convenience, and that sounds like delightful and addicting. So
addicting, because love's addicting.
So the second book that launches this week is Hildie's book, and it's a brand new book in a new series, and it's A Rogue to Reform. I keep trying to remember the rogue instead of reform the rogue every time I write it in my notes. But it's A Rogue to Reform, and it's the first book in the Rogues of the Lowlands series. And you have to tell me what the Lowlands are as opposed to the Highlands, because, we always talk about Highlanders. We don't talk about Lowlanders that much.
Right. And I think I'm writing this series, kind of delving into two new niches that I don't think have been explored enough. In the Rogues of the Lowlands, the reason I decided to write it is because I wanted to write Regency, but not in England. I write Scottish for most of my books, so I thought, what if I researched it, in Glasgow and Edinburgh and all those areas also had society, also had the same sort of customs and ways about doing things. The balls and the courtships and all that was pretty much the same as it was in England. And so those are the south of this. You hit the lowlands probably pretty much. Most of Scotland is the lowlands, but if you look at a map, Glasgow and Edinburgh are lower, and in Scotland, not too far from England. So that's why they're considered the lowlands. And so I decided, well, what if I write Regency in the lowlands? And what if I decide to use, what we think of as Highlanders, or more or less Scotsmen, as the heroes? And so I really am having fun because this is something different. And so the first book is A Road to Reform, and there are 4 books so far in this series of the Rogues of the Lowlands. And it's 4 men that are friends. They've been friends since pretty much, primary school. And I don't know if it was called primary school in the 1800s, but since school. And they're all from pretty well-to-do families, not quite titled. One of them is titled, the rest are not. But they all come from influential, wealthy families. But for some reason or another, all 4, because of their roguish ways, have become estranged from their family or have gambled away their money. One is a gambler. One is just asked for his inheritance in advance and just, blew it all. And so all the 3 of them are pretty much penniless. But
they all need reforming.
They all need reforming, but they decided they have come to a point in their lives when they're all in their 30s now, and they realize the mistakes that they've made. And so they decide, let's become wealthy again by sponsoring a ship. And in those days, wealthy families would sponsor a ship to the Isles somewhere, the West Indies or India or somewhere, where they would get spices and come back, and spices were even more valuable than gold. They would make a fortune. People would make fortunes by sponsoring these ships. So they are going to go in 4 ways and sponsor the ship, because it's very expensive to sponsor a ship. Of course, being rogues, they decide that the way they're going to come up with each of their capitals is by seducing a woman out of the money. So they each have a plan on how they will seduce a specific widow or a rich woman who keeps lovers. And so this guy in the first book, he decides that he is going to seduce this very wealthy widow. And so he's coming up with a plan. And just about that time, one of his friends, of the 4, the sister comes back from school in England. And she is so miffed that her brother's hanging out with this ne'er-do-well. He's just been
It sounds like she should be.
Even though her brother is just as bad, if not worse. But that's how they start coming. They're pretty much... it's the brothers, her friends, his friend's sister type romance, and combined with a little bit of enemies to lovers, because she cannot stand him and his ways. But of course, she hasn't seen him in years. And the first time they meet is funny, because she comes up behind him, because he's kind of standing behind a big giant floral arrangement, kind of spying on the widow to kind of get a glimpse of what she's doing so he can make his approach. And she comes up behind him and says, what are you up to now? Probably nothing good. And so he hears the voice and knows it's his friend's snooty little sister. Of course, he turns around and is pretty much gobsmacked by the fact that she is so different. She's grown up. And so I really enjoyed bringing them around to falling in love and admitting they're in love. And then him deciding, well, if I marry her, it'll take a while because of the dowry and all this, and I'm not going to have the money for the that won't have the capital to sponsor the ship, and he has to decide between love and coming up with the money for the project. So I won't give away whether or not he comes up with the money for it or what happens, but I will say, of course, it's a happy ending.
But he's got a pretty big arc if he's going to go from trying to seduce a wealthy widow to true love and everything else.
I know. And it's like I said, it's been fun redeeming these rogues.
That's a lot of personal growth there.
It is, yeah. But I think the reader will, kind of feel a little dubious about him in the beginning. You'll get kind of how he feels about things, but they're kind of be dubious about his character. And I hope to bring the reader to the point where they're cheering for him and hoping that things work out.
Oh, good. I do like the ones where you can't tell how he's going to turn into a decent person by the time this is done.
Right.
It turns around. So
it's a lot of fun.
And there are 4 books in the series?
4 books. It's a rogue to reform, a rogue to forget, a rogue to cherish, and a rogue to ensnare. And like you said, the first one, a rogue to reform, comes out on the 29th of this month, which is 2 days from now.
Yeah.
That's awesome. This recording.
Awesome. So the last book that we have coming out this week is Alexandra's book, and it's The Duchess Games.
Right.
And it's the first book in the Dainty Devils, and there's a one-eyed fox. So you've got a lot of explaining to do.
Yep.
I'm going to need a lot more information than I have right now as to how we get. Well, there's a goat too, right?
There is a goat.
I'm a big fan of goats.
Turtle.
Only the girl ones, not the boy ones. The boy ones are vile, like
Bunch of
Marie's
stuff.
cousin, but
So The Duchess Games is the first book in the Dainty Devils, and The Duchess Games is about Cat Sparrow, and she wants to be a smuggler to save her village. It's in Cornwall. The second book is about a highwaywoman, and the third is about an art thief. So I just wanted a bunch of romps and just have like a good adventure. So The Duchess Games, the Duke is very proper, and Cat, the village girl, is not. They knew each other when they were quite young and fell in love, but then he became the Duke. His dad died, and he kind of let himself be taken over by society. He went to London. They kind of, parted ways, which made sense to Kat because she's a village girl. She never expected anything different, that a Duke would marry her. So there's a lot of second chance and mutual pining because they're both idiots in love and assume the other person doesn't care for them and has forgotten all about them. And of course, they haven't. Callum is a Duke, and his mother's decided that he's in his 30s now, and that's enough. He needs to get married. He needs an heir. And his mother is frankly unbearable and decides to host the Duchess Games to bring all of the women that she thinks would make good duchesses.
Oh, cool.
So they have to compete in things like curtsying and swimming and speaking French and watercolors and societal achievements that Kat, as a village girl, does not particularly have. But she gets herself invited with her sister because she wants to steal the Duke's signet ring. So Dukes would have a family ring, which they would use for wax seals to prove that they were the Duke and they were giving orders. So she wants that ring so that she can set up her smuggling operation and have letters with the Duke's signet, like, seal on it to get her stuff where it needs to go. Of course, it does not go smoothly. She also rescues animals. So there's a one-eyed goat. There's a turtle they rescue. There's kittens. There's wolfhounds. It's just a big old mess. It's not at all genteel, much to his mother's dismay. But I had so much fun, and it's for the Flame line, which I've never written for before, and I love. So fun. So much fun.
The Flame line is the extra steamy, extra spicy, extra open door line.
It's my new favorite place. I love it.
Well, I love that, and I love that everybody can find their own level too. It's like if you want the door closed, you can have a closed door, and if you want the door all the way open, you can have flame, and if you want in between, you can do the originals. So that sounds like so much fun. You still didn't tell us how she got the fox, though.
She basically rescues animals. That's what she does when she's not smuggling, and everyone in the area, in the villages, and all the other villages, pretty much knows that she will take in any animal. So they just keep dropping animals off at her door. So she has a sister and a brother. Her village is quite poor. There was a lot of taxation. It's 1805. It's the beginning of the war. So salt is taxed, and brandy and lace and everything. But salt, especially for a seaside village in Cornwall, is super important to salt the fish that you can eat.
they're not doing well. So that's why she decides to start the smuggling. But she still mostly takes care of her animals too.
That sounds like so much fun. And it's the first book, and there are 3 books in this.
It is 3 books in the Dainty Devils, yes.
And we get all women who are pushing the boundaries of what would be considered acceptable.
Proper behavior, absolutely.
Tromping the boundaries, just tromping all over the boundaries.
Illegal, but whatever, it's fine. Just slightly.
Well, it sounds like so much fun. So you were talking about how that Flame is your happy place now. Did you start this may be an inappropriate question. Did you start reading really spicy stuff when you were younger? Like when did you come to romance as a reader, and what was your entry point?
I came to romance as a reader, like a lot of people, through my mother. And I think I was maybe 15 or 16, and we were on a family vacation. I remember we were on a boat and there was nowhere to go. And I was always a reader, but I'd read all my books. And she had A Knight in Shining Armor by Jude Deveraux. Oh, yes. And I loved it. I was very into medieval stories as well at the time, and time travel. Perfect. Loved it. So I just gobbled it up. And then when I found Amanda Quick novels, I was like,
oh my goodness.
I live here now. This is my home. I'm very happy here and I'm never leaving. And then just sort of progressed from there.
Yeah. That's half the reason that I like to ask this question is because I get reminded of books that I read, when I was 15 or 16 that I loved too. Marie, what about you?
So I was probably 19 or 20. I didn't do a lot of reading up until then, especially not romance, up until that point. And I remember I was really sick this one. I was home. I think my first daughter was born. And anyway, so I was just really sick, and kind of back up a little bit. I only have one ear. I'm deaf in this one and have been since I was born. And so when I had a head cold, it totally blocked it out.
Oh,
and
yeah.
so it's like, luckily I lived with my mom and dad at the time. My husband and I, the baby. Anyway, but my stepmother said, I've got a book for you to read. It will keep you entertained, because I couldn't watch TV. I couldn't listen to the radio. She goes, you'll really like it. So she brought me A Rose in Winter by Kathleen Woodwis.
Oh my goodness.
And I did. I started I just, you get hooked and you're just so into this story. And all of a sudden it's like, how these surprises started coming out. And after that, I read all of her books. And then I went from her to Judith McNaught, to Laverne Spencer, to Julia Quinn. I mean, I was reading everything that I could, because I was so in love with romance. So, yeah.
Hildie, what about you?
Well, I was way too young to be reading it. I was probably 15 when I accidentally picked up the Skye O'Malley series by Bertram Small. And I think I read those books 2 or 3 times. I actually was saved. I joined the Army at 18, and I took a letter that I got from Bertram Small with me to boot camp.
Wow.
I was just so excited when she wrote me back. Back in those days, you wrote mail,
Yeah.
And after that, I fell into Barbara Cartland back in those days, and also Judith McNaught, and and after that, I never looked back. That's all I ever read. I don't think until I joined a book club or 2 that I started reading other books like women's fiction and stuff, because I just want romance, because I know there's going to be a happy ending. I can't stand there not to be a happy ending or some kind of resolution to the
And why aren't
story.
they kissing yet?
Yeah, exactly.
When you're doing anything else.
I know, it's like you read an entire book and you're like, there was something there. Why didn't they explore it? I just want that. Yeah, exactly.
Or even just keep it off the page. Like my dad used to travel a lot, and he'd bring back paperbacks, and so I read whatever he read. So it was Sidney Sheldon and Andrew Greeley and everybody else, and you would get right up to the romance, and then they go do something else, and it's like, we'll go. I want that as much as I want the car chases and everything. Like I want all the parts. So
I once had a reader. I think it was even on an Amazon review, said her characters kiss too much. I'm like, seriously?
That's
And
romance.
go read something else. Because, yes, my characters kiss.
I will
been
admit,
told
though,
tawdry in a review.
Yeah. Well, people are being chased in one of those fast action movies, though, and they're like about to die, and they end up in an alley and they start kissing. I'm like, they're gonna come kill you. So there are certain reasons that.
And neither one of you is going to see him coming. So we've got we have Brother's Best Friend and Enemies to Lovers and Marriage of Convenience. What are your favorite in the books this week? What are your favorite tropes to read, or your favorite tropes to write? What are the ones that catch you the most?
There's so many. I like Friends to Lovers. I like Enemies to Lovers. I think Second Chances. I think those are my top 3.
Yeah, I like Second Chances because you already have a level of intimacy established. Right. It means you can go that much further in the time that you have.
Right, a base.
So.
I think in my quartet I start with Enemies to Lovers, Brothers, Friends, Brothers, Sister. I can't even say that.
Brother's Best Friend.
That one. And then I also have the Friends to Lovers. And this last one is more of a, what is that when not instant love, but instant marriage, like something happens and they get catapulted into marrying right away without really knowing each other. So I like that too, because then, they go through all these things trying to get to know each other. And bam, you're already married.
Yeah, that is kind of fun when you like, and Marriage of Convenience, I think it's a little bit like that too, because the couple is the couple is together. There's no question they're established.
Right.
And then the question is, which one of them is going to bend first and admit to the fact that this is more than just, this is more than just a convenience.
Yes, love that.
And the stakes are usually pretty high. So, what about you, Alyxandra?
Enemies to Lovers, always. I love the banter and that sort of chemistry. And I do love Marriage of Convenience, especially for historical romance, because it gives you more of an opportunity to sort of circumvent a lot of the accepted rules, or even the accepted rules that readers come in expecting, even though Regency Society was not that straight-laced, I'm here to tell you. And it just gives you more chance to play in a world that you're breaking the rules, but there's a bit of safety, so you can really break the rules in a fun way without worrying too much about the consequences in a historical, which I like.
Yeah, that makes sense. So we've talked about favorite books and we've talked about favorite tropes. We have just a couple minutes left. Do you want to talk a little bit about how you went from reading romance to writing romance? What was the thing that tipped you over and made you decide to tell your own stories?
Mine was watching bad Hollywood movies. So, you're falling in love, with these characters, and then they don't end up together at the end. Seriously, why did I waste my time watching?
Come on, Nicholas Sparks.
And I've always had dreams that were kind of in movie form. And there for a while, I would wake up going, oh, that would make a good book. That would make it, because, we think we do, are the best. But when you watch really stupid movies that don't have a happy ever after, and then you think, you know what, I'm going to write better than that. I'm going to write a story, and it's going to be better than that one. And that's all the first book. Your first book, you're right, probably never sees the light of day. But it kicks in your muse, and you're like, that's all it took was that one starting to write a stupid book, and then it just took off. I probably had 20 books written in 1 year.
Oh, wow.
These were novels. These are like 80,000 or more words.
Wow. Holy cow.
Yeah. Like I said, the 90s was like thirsty.
No sleep, Marie.
Okay. I even had a full-time job. No, I didn't. I had a part-time job at that time. But yeah, it was fun though.
Oh my goodness. What about you, Alyxandra? How did you switch over?
I was always writing stories, like from 9 years old, 10 years old, and I loved fantasy. That was another genre love that I have. So I was reading a lot of fantasy and writing fantasy stories. And then once I read those first romance novels, I read so many again, like Jude Deveraux, Julie Garwood, Judith Knott. It was the 90s. There's just like, I put them in my brain. And then in my first year of university, I was like, okay, well, I'm writing all these essays and I'm taking creative writing and taking English literature, and that's great. But I love this and no one's talking about this. So I wrote my own because it was just so much fun. And I wrote 3 or 4 and I sent one off to Harlequin and got a letter back saying they were interested. That line went defunct before they could accept anything. But I think I was, 20. And I was like, it lit that fire once again where it was like, I don't just have to read it. I can write it. And writing was always a thing I loved anyway. And then I took a detour through publishing young adult paranormal for a good 10, 15 years before I got to publishing.
Like you do.
As you do. They kissed lots too while running from danger. So the romance was always there, just in a different form.
And fantasy is one of those places where I wish that there was more of a marriage between romance and fantasy, because I love them both, and I would just like
fantasy romance novels are so good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hildie, what about you?
I am really nosy. It's a combination of 2 things. I think everybody with a creative mind, your brain is always going, and I'm always thinking of things and how things could be. And I devoured books. But I always wanted to know more. I'm like, I bet the author knows more about this guy, especially when you fall in love with a hero. You want to know everything about him. It would make a very boring read if the author went into his favorite color, his favorite foods and all that, just so you know everything. I bet the author knows more. And so I thought, if I write a book, then I will know everything about this guy. It turns out that if you ask me any of my heroes' favorite color, I probably couldn't tell you, but especially medieval Highlanders, they probably didn't give a crap about any colors. But I just wanted to know more about her, more about him, more about the background, and I think it was a part of that. Another thing was that, like Alyxandra, I started writing little short stories since I was young. Whenever we had a writing assignment, I was like, yes, while everybody else is groaning, and I turned in more than was asked for, and I would elaborate and make it into a story. And then the teacher was like, this is not quite what I was asking. I wanted an essay on, What do you think about this historical part where I wrote a short story about this mercenary who was really good looking, and I just loved it, always writing and putting any ideas into a story. It just feels so fulfilling. I can't imagine not writing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I love what you said about wanting to know more. MJ Rose used to talk about that, about how before she started writing, she'd make boxes for her characters. And she'd collect the kind of things that they would like and put them in a box. And then, so she'd have like these tactile, like, character touch points. And I always thought that was such an interesting idea, the idea of making them that real to yourself, so that you're telling real people's stories. So, ladies, this is
real. I thought all characters were real.
Well, this was Jennifer Lynn Barnes that had done the research on the way people react to characters, and it's fascinating that you would care more about an imaginary person than somebody sitting right next to you. But there's a reason that it's Team Edward, Team.
Your brain doesn't differentiate always.
No.
And your imaginary friend.
Yep, and the pathways are the same, and the way the memories get laid down, all of it's just the same as if they were real. So they are very real, which makes for some crying when some of them have to die. So, well, ladies, it was a delight to talk to you this week. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us. I just wanted to take a minute and remind everybody that Dragonblade is having a time travel historical romance promo all weekend long, like 5 days. There are free books. There are 99-cent books. You can go back and forth in time. There's Maeve Grayson has Highlanders falling back in time to Highlanders. Bellamy's got she's going all over the place. There's Paris. There's London. There's Italy, and it's just I'm super excited, because it's like we started talking about it, and was like, realized we had all of these time travel books. So we're doing a big promo. So if you haven't had a chance to get them, this weekend is the time to do that. I will pop the links for all of this week's books into the comment section. You want to make sure you grab your Dragonblade books. They are the very best deal on pre-order and release. The first book in the series, you've got 2 brand new series to start, and you can read all across the Heat line if you want, because we've got everything from Sweet Dream to Flame. So you will not have any trouble finding something to keep yourself entertained this weekend. But thanks so much again, ladies. I appreciate you taking the time to do this.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.